Thank you everyone for joining our podcast today. The topic for today's discussion is Procure-to-Pay metrics and dashboard. And our expert panelist is Chris Doxey, President at Doxey Inc. Chris spent most of her career implementing leading financial processes and internal controls at global companies such as Digital Equipment Corporation, Compaq Computer Corporation, Hewlett-Packard, and MCI, where she was a controller, Director of Financial Process Transformation, Internal Auditor, and Director of Global Accounts. Welcome, Chris, and thanks a lot for doing this. Let's kickstart this podcast with our first question. What are the various types of business metrics to consider?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today, and we're going to talk about metrics today. And to answer the first question, the types of metrics that we should consider are, of course, business metrics. Those have to do with our business process, such as Procure-to-Pay. Financial metrics, these are ones that show results of a financial process, typically done after the financial close is completed. And then we have performance metrics, and those are really to indicate not only the performance of the financial operation, but they can also be used to highlight performance of certain associates within accounts payable and procurement. And then we have key performance indicators. These could be a series of metrics that show how well a company is doing, and they could be the ones that the CFO or the CEO like to take a look at. And those are usually presented in the last type of metric, which is a dashboard. This really is a way to look at an entire company, an entire process, and be able to actually see what's going on across the company by looking at a dashboard. And with a dashboard, we really see how well the company is operating, and we might see some things like an indication of what we need to fix or what we need to correct. And much like when we're driving our car, if an indicator comes on the dashboard, we need to pull the car over and take immediate action. And that's really the main function of a dashboard.
Thanks, Chris. So can you please tell us what exactly is a dashboard, and can you provide some examples?
Yes, absolutely. A dashboard is really a series of indicators or metrics that help us focus on what's important. And it's also a very non-complex view of key indicators, as we talked about on the previous question, or business metrics. And, certainly a very simple way of looking at our company or our process. And, as mentioned, a dashboard tells us where we should focus and when to lift up the hood of a process, or in this case, a hood of an automobile. So an example of a dashboard could be an AP dashboard, really looking at payments. How many payments are we producing each month? How many suppliers are we paying? How many are automated payments? And what is a real-time metric for our payments that we're actually executing in a timely manner? And what that means is how many are we paying early, how many are we paying on time, and how many are we paying late. And what a dashboard also does is it could look at some trends from the previous month to the previous period, and also compare with maybe some benchmark data as well.
Thanks, Chris. So can you please tell us what are the 4 fundamental groups of Procure-to-Pay metrics?
Yes, we have 4 fundamental groups, and you can probably guess the first one is going to be cost savings and value. And that's really looking at, all right, where are we saving cost in the P2P process? And it helps to actually look at the value of the P2P process. Sometimes what we need to do is really consider, okay, how are our companies actually measuring value of a process? And that can actually be done by cost savings. The next is transactional quality. This shows us how well we're performing our transaction within the P2P process. And in this bucket, or this group, we might break out certain processes to look at the effectiveness of supplier invoices being paid in a timely manner, and how many are paid without errors. And we start delving into exceptions and how many exceptions do we have, and basically 1 and 2, cost savings and value, and quality go very much hand in hand. The third component is customer service. And with customer service, we're looking at how quickly are we actually performing and responding to supplier inquiries and other inquiries that may come from purchasing and other areas of our company. And last but not least, the fourth component is controllership. And this is one you can probably guess that a controller and a CFO really like to focus on. And the controller type of metric, we're looking at internal controls, we're looking at process defects, and we're looking at account reconciliation issues. And the controllership one, just to summarize, is going to be focused on internal control effectiveness and also the effectiveness of accounting reconciliations and accruals that impact the end of the month. And those would be the 4 fundamental groups of P2P metrics.
Thanks, Chris. Can you please provide some examples of P2P metrics?
Yeah, some examples of P2P metrics would actually be cost per invoice, cost per purchase order, cycle time to process an invoice, the actually number of invoices and purchase orders processed by an associate within the P2P process, number of discounts taken against number of discounts available or percentages of discounts, dollar value of discounts, cost savings from automation initiatives is very key, number of supplier inquiries that are coming in, and how quickly we're responding to those inquiries. And there are several scorecards that we look at when we talk about metrics, and again, they should be assigned to a process owner, and that person is responsible for reporting and responding to queries about the results of metrics.
Thanks, Chris. Can you please tell me about the implementation process for metrics and what are the key steps?
There are basically 5 steps for implementing metrics. It starts with identifying the process and gathering data. And this can be where it gets a little tricky because sometimes data that we need to calculate metrics needs to come from different sources. Hopefully we can have somewhat of an automated process where data is coming from the system of record, cost data, and basically having a very consistent and well-defined process for gathering data is very key for implementing a metrics initiative. The third step is analyzing outcomes. And when you first start calculating your metrics, you want to make sure that they make sense. You want to make sure that the results are telling the proper story and that they're reflecting the results of the P2P process. So analyzing before you report, which is number 4 in our implementation process, is very key. We don't report until we've taken a good look at those metrics results to make sure that everything is accurate. And the 5th component of an implementation process for metrics is use these metrics for process improvement and take a look at how your results are telling you where you can improve. And of course, improving may mean do some things to enhance the process, maybe move resources around, and of course, these help set the stage for an automation initiative as well.
Thanks, Chris. So what is a good checklist to follow when implementing these metrics?
The first step is use common sense and make sure you adhere to organizational sensitivity. And what that means is you don't want to be highlighting maybe an associate's poor performance or an internal control issue or a potential suspect of fraud or a breakdown in process. You don't want to tie those to individuals. And secondly, you don't want to be broadcasting potential problems that haven't been reported to your management team. So be very cautious of organizational sensitivity, and particularly if you're using, again, performance metrics or if you're suspecting an issue. Provide regular feedback, and that is work with your team, and certainly get regular feedback to really get a handle on how things are going within the P2P process that you're reporting on. Number 4, set clear goals with supporting metrics, and goals should be tied to metrics. How are you measuring your strategy, and how are you taking a look at the best metrics that support that goal and strategy? And, of course, use the metrics for identification of opportunities. And don't just focus on one metric. People love to get an idea on, how success can be measured, and they usually come up with one single metric. Well, one metric may lead to other ones, and you have to look at metrics that correlate and correspond with the results. Number 7, report trends. And what's the storyline? What are the metrics telling you? Are you improving tremendously in your P2P process, or are there areas that maybe need a little bit more focus? And that leads to number 8. If you have issues that need to be addressed, if you need some remediation activity, you identify who, what, when, and where, and you set target dates with a schedule for meeting those plans, and always be prepared to answer questions that you might get from your management team, and certainly have the ability to drill down. And number 9, you communicate your results in a simple format and not a lot of charts and graphs, and certainly that's great, but make sure it's not overly complicated, and you have to know your audience. As an example, if you're reporting a dashboard with KPIs to your controller and CFO, you want to make sure that it's not overly complicated and that they can take a quick look, like dashboard results that we looked at, and be able to drill down again as necessary.
Thanks a lot, Chris. That was a very informative podcast. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. Thanks again for doing it.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.